While this isn't a roster change necessarily, I found this particular move to be just as, if not more interesting than the rest. A few days ago, Clayster announced on Twitter that he has officially re-signed with eUnited moving into the year 2020. Now, the reason why I find this to be a huge deal, the reason why I want to even make a segment about it, is because of Clayster's outreach, because of his fan base that he currently has under his brand. And there aren't many people who can have a particular relationship like this with a brand that Clayster does. There's not many people who can be a franchise face like Clayster. I think outside of Optic Gaming is the most particular player that you want to have a fan base around. I said outside of Optic Gaming, you can maybe list Aches, maybe Formal, maybe even JCap, who, funny enough, is now on eUnited, so that kind of takes away anyone else's plans. And then I guess you could say names like Attach and Hook are starting to kind of become on the horizon based off their usability as far as Hook within other esports. Attach is kind of growing his fan base and becoming more of a known face throughout all of Call of Duty Esports. But organizations nowadays, they want the face. It used to be in the past about skill. We want the best players. We want the guys who are going to, get us high-level placements, et cetera, et cetera. High-level organizations right now, especially with franchise on the horizon, they want the face. They want the guy who's going to bring them sponsorships. They want the guy who's going to bring them brand deals. They want the audience. They want money, because that's how organizations work nowadays. We all know this, right? Organizations want to see a payday. They at least want to go even. And whenever you have a player like this who automatically guarantees you essentially a roam over an audience that the Call of Duty scene happens to have, you got to take it, and you have to try and seize that opportunity. So I've heard many organizations, through different talks that I've had, through different discussions, saying that they want the face first. Talent's going to follow. Sponsorships are going to follow, and the audience will as well. And that's why the face is so important, because, like I said, it is a business. The money is what happens whenever you get the franchise face. And especially with Black Ops 4's impact right now, it seems to have Call of Duty put on a great track for the future, which only makes organizations want to have these players more under wraps. With 5-man teams coming out throughout this year as well, having those guaranteed players who are going to be long-lasting, who are going to see a future rather than a current success, is always going to be a very big deal. But I feel like with the future of franchising, Call of Duty has a very unique opportunity to really seize what could be this new format coming in the next few years. Like I said, I don't know if it's 1 year, I don't know if it's 2 years. I just have heard that it is very, very probable of happening soon. How do we define soon? I don't know. I don't know how we define soon exactly. But I will say is that I think Call of Duty has a very unique opportunity, and many people will say, oh my gosh, it can't become a franchised esport because of how easy it is to watch. If anything, I feel like the easiness that Call of Duty has to understand only benefits it when it comes to trying to engage with an audience who maybe isn't familiar with esports, isn't familiar with gaming, isn't familiar with the format of how esports are typically ran. And I feel like, just to compare to other esports that are currently out there, they're kind of difficult to understand, especially franchise ones. Just to name two, right? Overwatch. The entire community talks about how difficult it is to understand Overwatch to a point. If you aren't a dedicated player and playing it constantly, or kind of being up in touch with the new metas, I feel like Overwatch is very difficult to understand from everyone's point of view, let alone a new viewer who's trying to come in and understand it. And don't even get me started on League of Legends. Like, I'm a big fan of League of Legends, but I have no clue what's going on most of the time, and I guarantee most of the people who are watching don't either. I feel like you need almost a college class to understand it. Like, you almost need to have a major in League of Legends to understand the champions and how everything works, the abilities, etc. But so I feel like, since North Americans, which are a huge fan base in Call of Duty Esports, are going to be a big basis for the viewership, they're already used to this type of format. So when I talk about franchising, right, it's a league format. It's similar to the NBA. It's similar to the NFL, MLB, etc. And when it comes down to Europe, they're familiar with what they know as football, what Americans know as soccer, right? And when it comes down to FIFA, when it comes down to those particular leagues, there are multiple ones, right? There are multiple leagues that you draw to. There's multiple tournaments throughout the year that go on. When it comes down to typical American sports, we have a season, then we have playoffs, and we have a championship. That's how it works, and that's exactly how franchising works. So you take the simplicity that Call of Duty Esports already has, you take in the future that it could have as far as future viewership, and you have an esport that I feel like is going to be very easy for the casual fan to understand. And so for organizations like eUnited to have faces who are already going to promote themselves, this is a huge opportunity for teams like this to grab those franchise faces, to grab the teams who are going to be in the spotlight because of the future that Call of Duty Esports has. So that's why I think this is such a huge deal, because if you have, let me give you a scenario. If dad walks into the living room and he turns on the TV and he sees Call of Duty on the screen, he's going to be more inclined to watch that because of how easy it is to understand. And while he's watching this particular game going on, and he notices on the jersey it says eUnited, it says Clayster, it says a number of different things, it says the sponsorships, and he starts to grow a fan base around that team because of not just their talent, but by different content that's coming up, by different resources that are being displayed throughout social media, is only going to help organizations see more success. So, summary, Clayster gives you a guaranteed fan base, guaranteed sponsorships, and a fan base along with an appetizing destination for talent. Quickly, I want to take you back to Call of Duty Champs in World War II. This past season, when Optic Gaming was knocked out, who was everyone rooting for? What was the team, what was the organization that everyone started to form a basis around? What was everyone in the venue, who were they rooting for? It was eUnited. And it wasn't even close. Like, not even FaZe Clan, not even Team Envious, not even major organizations who you could argue, from a social media standpoint, from other esports arguments that could be made. Everyone was rooting for eUnited to succeed. And all of that, every single bit of that, comes from the brand that Clayster brings. So I think this is a huge opportunity that eUnited has. Having Clayster throughout 2020 until then is going to be amazing, and that only guarantees themselves a future in Call of Duty Esports.